Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about illusions. So let's get into it. So the question in question was posted on a video that I made. Thank you for your wisdom, Frederick. Well, no worries. Now on a kind of related note, how do I give the illusion of being a much better programmer than I actually am? So the related note was that the video was called "How do you hide in an IT company if you are a bad programmer?" And so the question then becomes, all right, so how do I give the illusion that I'm better than I am? So just as I did in that last video, where it's a kind of controversial subject, because I mean, giving tips on how to do something that might not be completely ethical, or I mean, it depends on how you look at things, right? I will just say that what you do with what I tell you, that's up to you, but I don't want you to think that this is just something that you do without any risk. I want to make you understand that in my experience, at the very least, it's usually better to be transparent about where you are in your career and what skills you have and so forth, because although it is absolutely possible, and I mean, nobody's going to be surprised if I say that there are people who are making they're making headway in their careers and lives based on, you know, subjective truths and half-truths, etc., etc., and doing self-promotion or inflating their skills and so forth. There's also a danger with it, because if you do it incorrectly, people will expect you to deliver, and unless you're a really good con artist or something like that, you're going to get found out, or you're going to introduce what I call bias remorse for like when you get hired into a company. Because as you can imagine, if you were to, let's say for the sake of argument, you were to hire a contractor or someone who's going to come and fix your house or something, and they cost a lot of money, and then you think it's a really good company and they have like all of these shiny websites and like all of this stuff, and then they come there and they make a complete mess out of everything, even though they seem to be on the level very charismatic, etc., etc., you are going to feel disappointed because your expectations were that they were much better than they are. And that is the danger with doing this. So with that said, I kind of give you a hint into what I'm going to say about like what I like to think of as the best approach, which is to be all talk. And this is true for it's usually the way that most people who, it doesn't have to just be software developers, it's how most individuals who are trying to promote their own value, how they actually do it. They talk, they are charismatic, they have soft skills, social skills, and they know how to speak the lingo. So what you usually do is that you learn the relevant lingo, or in our case it's going to be practices such as Agile, Scrum, and the benefits of that, and like what's trendy. And guys, this is like what the internet is completely saturated with. Like a lot of this stuff, guys, you have no idea how many companies have a fairly serious strategy around promoting their own company through sharing like blogs and articles and like so forth on things that are, I mean, sure, they are relevant, but they're, let's call it, it's kind of like the toy, it's a toy thing usually. It's really not more about the quality of the learning that they provide, it's more about self-promoting. It's similar, in a sense, I will go as far as to say it's similar to sponsored content, where some news article or whatever, like they make an article about car alarms or fire extinguishers or something like that, and sure, it is news or like it's useful information, but the focus is not to give you the best information, and the focus is to sell you something. And that's exactly what what I'm saying. If you follow trends and then do like TikToks or blogs about like the basics of the basics, how a framework works, how a tool works, or how good and certain practices or your takings from that and your interpretations and so forth, what I like to call, you make a lot of noise and show a lot of passion, that is usually for a lot of people, it's actually that's going to translate into them thinking that you're really, really good, because you're making a lot of, like, you're there, or like you're in the spotlight, right? You're actually making noise. And if you think about that a little bit, this is actually, well, not necessarily that specific thing, but that is a lot of what a manager does. If you've ever had a manager who isn't all that super great, or like, it doesn't have to be someone who's bad, but because most of them have to do the same sort of thing. Like, there are managers who are really good in terms of like tech and so forth, but a lot of managers or people who are working in IT companies, product owners, etc., etc., most of them have no clue whatsoever, in many cases, what the developers do. Like, they have no idea of technology, they have no idea of any of that stuff, but they can talk the talk, and that is enough knowledge so that they can, I mean, because usually what they do is like they leverage. In their situation, it's forgivable in a sense, because like it's not necessarily their job to be a full-fledged developer, but you can leverage the same thing, because you have to remember, sure, you might not be able to go to your senior software coworker who knows like everything about everything and like pitch that you're like this super intelligent, awesome developer, because he or she knows what that looks like. But you will definitely be able to go and start tech talking or doing lunch meetings or whatever about knowledge sharing about different tools and practices, and being part of like extracurricular activities at your place of work, and get all of the non-technical stakeholders to notice you, because hey, now that person is doing this presentation on how microservices work, or how this works, or how that works, and that is going to translate into a lot of people thinking that you're a pretty good, an awesome developer. So the thing here that I need to say though is that just because this is the thing, if you're really passionate about tech, and I've said this before, you don't have to be like a master super PhD type of person who knows everything about something very niched, or something like where you know everything, to do like a YouTube video or a blog or a presentation or something like that. You might just be enthusiastic about what you've learned and you want to share that. And so what I want you to really understand there is that just because somebody's up on a stage making a presentation on something that you feel is basic, and this is going to happen more and more to you as the more senior you get. The more senior you get, the less relevant a lot of the tech talks are, because like they're not really showing you anything new. They're like just repeating stuff that you've already seen. But remember, everybody's in a different place in their development as a software developer. So it's like, you know, if you take a children's book for your native language and you start reading that, well, that's not going to be very fulfilling for you, right? It's the same thing, but like the book was written not with you in mind, it's written for somebody else. So a lot of people, like this phenomenon where a lot of people think that you're better than you are at what you do, it's a side effect in many cases from you just contributing, from you just sharing your passion about software development. And there's a lot of software gurus out there who are they are perceived as gurus more because they have a presence in the community rather than that they're like masters of their craft, if that makes sense. And that's not because they necessarily intended to be masters of the craft. It's just a cause from the fact that they're making noise. So what I want you to take away from this is that, number one, try to be very careful, like inflating your skills. I'm not saying, like, I mean, don't downplay it either. I mean, if you try to be honest and transparent about where you are in your career, it's usually the best bet, because then you can meet expectations, usually, which is a very good thing. If you do decide to try to inflate your own value or give the illusion that you're better than you are, then going the route with being all talk is usually what works, and that works for practically everybody. Where you don't follow trends, learn the lingo, learn what tools are relevant, speak with talking with people who have your managers and so forth, and making noise around, positive noise, and showing passion and so forth around things that aren't really all that complicated, and in many cases doesn't really make a difference. I've seen so many developers who get a pat on the shoulder for making a presentation about how we can do better pair programming when nobody in the entire company does pair programming. It's the sort of thing where it sounds nice in the ears of a manager, but in reality it doesn't make a lick of difference. Usually it doesn't make no difference. It's just, yeah, we talk about it, but nobody really does it. And that is, for managers, that's something that goes over really well. It's going to inflate your value, and in many cases they themselves are doing this sort of stuff. It's really rare, in my opinion, at the very least, to find a manager who's really good at making real meaningful change. It's not because they're bad, or because they're, as I was saying, it's not because they necessarily are trying to manipulate people. It's just that it's a really hard thing to do, but the effect is the same. So you can leverage that. You can show your passion, and you can do all these things, and the side effect is usually that people perceive you as being better than you are. That's usually how it goes, at the very least. Have a great day.